In this video, I'll be demonstrating how to set up a raised ink file in Illustrator CC for the HP Indigo 7900 press. If you have an earlier version of Illustrator, the same instructions apply. You just need to be familiar with where to find the panels and the tools that we'll be using. In this case, it's the Layers panel, the Swatches panel, and the Attributes panel. If any of these panels are not already visible, you can bring them up simply by going to Window in the menu bar and selecting whichever panels you need to appear. This design I'm using will have raised ink and CMYK and is intended to print on a white substrate. As you can see, I already have this business card design in CMYK that I'm going to be singling out this line illustration for my raised ink. Now, an important thing to know if you're considering using raised ink in your design: the maximum area that can be used with raised ink is 1 millimeter or 1/32 of an inch for the largest strokes and lines, and fonts no larger than 12 points. If you need a larger area of ink, then you'll need to see our videos on using clear varnish. If you're just starting your design, then you can begin using a raised ink swatch from the beginning. But before we get to that, let's start with setting up the proper layer. In your Layers panel, click Create New Layer. Simply double-click on the layer and it will pull up a panel where you can rename it. Type in raised ink exactly the way I have it here. This is case sensitive. If you spell it any other way, it won't work because this is the labeling we've used to program our press. So it needs to read capital R, AISED, space, capital I, NK. Also, this layer needs to stay as the top layer because this is also the way we have our press program to detect it. Now that we have the layer named, let's create a raised ink swatch. Go to your Swatches panel and click the drop-down menu in the upper right corner. Select New Swatch. The New Swatch panel will appear. Name this exactly the same way you named your layer, raised ink. Again, this is case sensitive and specific to our press. Under Color Type, select Spot. Under Color Mode, make sure that it's in CMYK. Now go to your sliders and create a color that you want to use for your raised ink. At TPSI, we generally use 100% cyan as our raised ink spot color, but you can use anything you'd like as long as it isn't 100% K. The press isn't looking for the color of the swatch, but it's looking for the swatch to be a spot color that's labeled raised ink. You know you have your raised ink swatch properly loaded if you see a black dot in the lower right-hand corner of your swatch. I would recommend deleting all the extra swatches in your Swatches panel except for the ones you're using in your design and your raised ink swatch. Now you can select the swatch, and since we're only using the raised ink layer, you can begin creating your design. Now, since I already have my design created, I need to select my illustration, which I have in this bottom layer. I only want to apply raised ink to this blue dog and not the yellow one. I'm going to copy and paste my blue dog into my raised ink layer. If you'll look, you'll see that I've created a knockout of the type into my blue dog so that the raised ink doesn't flow over my text, which also makes it easy to line up. Now that I've got my elements in this layer, I need to apply my raised ink swatch. If your design has raised ink applied to any type, make sure that you have all of your type converted to outlines. To do that, just select all of your text, go to Type, and select Create Outlines. Now, I don't have any that I'm applying raised ink here, so I'm not going to do that. Now take your selection tool and select all the elements where you've applied raised ink. In this case, I've only used it on my illustration. If you've applied it to any text, select that as well. Now, one easy way to make sure that you know that you have all the elements you want in a raised ink layer is to turn off the visibility in the other layers by simply clicking on this eye symbol. If you have all of the elements you want in your raised ink layer, then select everything on this layer and go to the Attributes panel and select Overprint Fill. Now, if your design has strokes, you're going to also select Overprint Stroke unless it's grayed out. And if it's grayed out, don't worry about it and just select Overprint Fill. Remember to turn back on your other layers by clicking in this first box to reveal the eye symbol. Now go ahead and resave the file as a native Illustrator file. Next, you'll want to save your file as a PDF. At TPSI, we prefer having files submitted as PDFs. It's only if we have to troubleshoot your file where we need the native file. To save as PDF, go to File, Save As, and you'll see the Save As panel appear. Name your file where you want to save it to, and in the Format drop-down menu, select Adobe PDF. Now the Adobe PDF panel will appear in the General Settings category. In the preset, instead of the default entry, open up the drop-down menu and select Press Quality. In the Standard drop-down menu, select PDF X4 2010. You'll notice when you do that, the compatibility field will automatically change to Acrobat 7 PDF 1.6 or higher. Under the Option settings, go ahead and deselect the Preserve Illustrator editing capabilities if you have that checked. Leaving this checked will unnecessarily bloat the size of your file, and you can leave any of these other boxes checked that you like. Now we're going to move out of the General Settings into the Marks and Bleeds settings. Select Marks and Bleeds. At TPSI for raised ink, only check the trim marks under the printer's marks. Don't check any of these other settings. In the Bleeds section, use Document Bleeds. Click the Save PDF and you should see your PDF open up. I'm using Adobe Acrobat DC. Even if you have an earlier version of Acrobat, you still have the settings that we're getting ready to look at. Now we're going to proof your file to make sure it will print correctly. Once you have your PDF file open, you should see your trim marks and the designated bleed area. Once you've seen that those are set up correctly, go to Tools and look for Print Production. Open up that section, then look for Output Preview. You'll notice right away that a panel will open up, and the only thing I want you to pay attention to is the spot panels at the bottom of the page. You'll notice that it will show you all the process plates as well as the spot plates, but we're going to concentrate on the spot plates. Now, if you've set up your file correctly, you should see a raised ink spot color listed under the spot plates. You'll also notice that it's at 0%. So you're going to need to take your cursor and start moving it over the areas where you've applied raised ink. And so you should see it register at 100% if it's been properly applied. Now, if you're going to have a file that's more complicated than this example, please feel free to package your file by going to File, Package, and proofing everything to make sure all of your fonts are showing up and your links are embedded. The main thing we need is just your PDF, but when it comes to specialty inks and more intricate files, this is always a good habit to get into to make sure everything is there before it goes to print. If all of this is reading correctly, then that's it. Your file is ready to send us for printing.